Hey friends, Justin here. Well, I'm 39 years old and I am struggling with adult relationships. I think not a lot of people talk about how your relationships change as you get older. When you're a teenager or in your early 20s, you can just leave your house and run into people, meet people, and form these long relationships. But I don't know what it is about getting a little bit older. Relationships seem to be harder to form. Um, and I think people are in different seasons of their life. They're starting to settle down with their partners and think about different priorities. And so friending is not, always on the forefront of people's minds. So, here I am, 39 years old, and looking around at my circle, and, I'm looking back at my own reflection. So I wanted to share a couple of experiences. It's not that I haven't had friends, it is that they have become difficult to maintain. So share your insight with me, and and tell me some of the things that you guys have done to navigate adult relationships. So I moved to Dallas in 2018. I started working for Delta Airlines. I walked in the first day bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I met this girl. We'll call her Kelly for the sake of the video. And we were just bosom buddies. We worked in a call center where we took reservation calls all day long for Delta Airlines. And then we'd run home and get on the phone and talk for hours again. We would start at the beginning, like each one of our coworkers, we'd say, okay, let's talk about Frank. And we would just share our feelings all about Frank. Then we'd go to Sally, Lucy. It was just like a teenager relationship. We talked about the company. We talked about the trips we wanted to go on. And it was just so much fun. And we were friends, or have been friends now, I'd say 7 or 8 years. And a series of things, maybe 3 or 4 things happened that I said, each time something happened. And eventually I said, something's wrong here. So hopefully I can remember all 3. So I think the first, I started working for Delta in late 2018, and the COVID-19 pandemic happened the following year. And so our company laid us off. We didn't have, it was sad because, this was the career that I think we all saw for ourselves. And so we were laid off, and another girl that we worked with called me and said, here's what you need to do to get on your unemployment. Trump has added an extra $600, the enhanced unemployment. This is what you need to do. And I called, thank you so much. Immediately before I even signed up, I called my friend Kelly. Girl, this is what we need to do. Now, we've been on the phone all day, the previous day, the day before, sharing any and everything. And I said, this is what I just found out. This is what we need to do. Oh, she says, I signed up for the unemployment maybe 3 weeks ago, and I've already gotten 2 paychecks. And I thought, oh, okay. You didn't mention it to me. But I was just so excited to have the information. I let it roll, and I signed up for mine, and we were just chatting back and forth. We were on unemployment, so now we didn't even have to talk on the phone to these people at work. We could just chit chat all day long, pay our rent, pay our bills. And the summer of 2020, I describe as the best summer of my life. I got a break from work, a break from life for the first time. And my bills were covered, And so, we traveled, we used our flight benefits, we had a ball, me and this girl, Kelly. Fast forward a couple of years later, we were both in the market to buy houses. I had been talking ever since I started Delta. I want to buy, my first place, a condo or a house or something. And, I don't know Texas. So, go on this journey with me, Kelly. And so during the pandemic, I think when interest rates rose, there were so many zero down payment programs. We will waive the PMI, we'll do your closing costs. And I had found this program through Bank of America that worked with folks that were, it was called Community Development Lending for folks in our demographic to really help us out. So immediately I call my girlfriend Kelly. I say, girl, let's go. It's time. Let's go get our houses. We're talking no down payments. We're talking, all of these incentives to buy a home. She says, I've actually already been through that program. We just couldn't find a house that we wanted, her and her husband. And I said, I've been talking about, homes, buying a house here for the longest. And so you've already been through the program and didn't mention it to me? Wow. And I won't drag the story out, but so many instances like that happened, at least 4 or 5, where I was kind of knocked back saying, wow, I'm sharing everything, my upbringing, all my struggles, how much money I've got in the bank, what we went to the grocery store and bought. But these really important, life-changing things, you seem to be holding back from me as a single person without support here in Texas. And I'm like, well, I got to a certain point where I said, well, with friends like this, who needs enemies? And we talked about it, and I said, I feel like there may be some sort of competition. There may be something that I'm not getting. And she says, yeah, well, I think it's normal to just kind of naturally have competition with your friends. We would talk on the phone day in, day out. And I would call her one day and I would say, hey girl, what you doing this afternoon? Oh, I'm in Cozumel. Me and hubby, we booked a trip to St. Thomas. We'll be here for the next week at an all-inclusive resort and blah, 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 blah. And I'm saying, oh, you didn't mention to me anything about a trip. Now, I'm a very solo person. I'm very independent. I'm never going to invite myself on someone else's trip. Unless these are plans that we've organically made, I ain't going. And I mentioned to her, I said, you like to do this surprise pop-up thing. I'm in this fabulous place. What's that about? And she's like, yeah, I think it's fun to just kind of naturally compete with your friends. And, I had to tell her, I said, I don't compete with people. If I was to start competing, you would lose, and you don't want me to start doing those behaviors of surprise, I have this, or surprise, I've popped up there. And I had to tell her, I said, you know what? It's gotten to the point where I'm going to have to take a step back. I love you, we're still friends, but I don't trust our communication. Here I am pouring my heart out to you every day, and you're not necessarily weaponizing it, but not sharing critical information for me to get from point A to B. And it feels like you're hurting me versus being my friend. And, we talked on and off a couple times over the summer, but eventually, the conversations just tapered off because it's hard for me to be kind of fake and phony, I have another friend that I was friends with for over 35 years. And there were many times I showed up for this girl, we'll call her Barbara. There were many times I showed up for Barbara when I wasn't able to even show up for myself. There was a time after my mom died, I moved to Los Angeles, and I was going from couch to couch, going on dates with guys that I was not attracted to eat tonight, to have a place to stay, really trying to stabilize my life. There was a night or two where I probably slept outside. And I would still show up for this childhood friend of mine. Every time I would call her or she would call me, "Hi, honey, what are you doing? And where are you working at now?" And I just always had a ball of energy and support and love for this person. And I noticed over the years that I kept showing up for them, but they would never show up for me. After I bought my house, and I'm championing and celebrating every little job they have, every little restaurant job they get, every little bartending gig. And I said, that person couldn't tell you what street I lived on, what county I lived in, what color my house is. And so here I am pouring my life, and all of my good energy, when I didn't even have enough energy for me, into a person who could just care less about me. Our parents are the ones that put us together and created or started this relationship. And I started to feel like not only were they disrespecting me by not respecting who I was or showing up for me, they were disrespecting our parents, the relationship that they had created for us. And so instead of sitting around pissed off on behalf of my family and all these people, I said enough is enough. One day that same person attacked me with a homophobic rant about the gay agenda. And I knew at that point that the relationship was over. 35 plus years of friendship, just thrown away because of insecurity, because of stupidity, because of, a limited mindset. And those are just a couple of examples of adult relationships that I have had to navigate through where I've said, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. It has really, my viewpoints and seeing people for who they really are has really shrunk my circle, But one of the things that I'm going to do, or one of the things that I'm doing, is focusing on what is versus what isn't. In the wake of me doing things like closing down my Facebook and Instagram and doing other things, it's allowed me to focus on who is calling, who is texting, who are making attempts to show up in my life. And so where I may not have 2,000 followers anymore, or this big social network, if I can boil things down to 2 or 3 good, authentic relationships, I think that's good enough for me. You know what I mean? And so without going through that struggle, without feeling betrayed in those ways, I don't think I would have ever redirected my mindset to, a mindset of plenty versus, what I lack. And so, share your thoughts with me. Did I make the right choice? Do I need to call these people and forgive them, or have those chapters closed? I'm excited to hear what you think, how you guys have navigated adult relationships in your life. And until our next fun, chatty conversation, I hope you have a wonderful week and a wonderful day. Bye-bye.